A government report is showing that homelessness is up, but the unhoused among veterans is down. We've got two people to discuss this right now. We've got Anne Oliva with us. She is the CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and Catherine Monet, the CEO of National Homeless Veterans. Ladies, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you for
having
having
us.
us.
And let's start with you. What do the numbers say about the unhoused here in the U.S. and in our state?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. And I want to start with the notion that I think everyone can agree that communities and neighborhoods are safer and stronger when everybody in those neighborhoods has a safe place to lay their head at night. And it should be unacceptable to us as Americans that we saw an 18% increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness over the course of the year between 2023 and 2024. And we know that these increases are very much driven by a lack of affordable housing, especially housing that's affordable to people at the lowest incomes, because people are paying more and more of their income towards rent and are therefore being priced out of the market and becoming homeless for the first time. So in Tennessee, that's the nation's numbers, but in Tennessee, you all are bucking the national trend, so kudos to your state. We know that we've seen a 10% decrease in the number of people experiencing homelessness across the state, largely driven by places like Chattanooga. And but there's still more work to do. And that's because there is a shortage of affordable housing across the state of Tennessee. In fact, you're short about 121,000 units that are affordable to people at the lowest incomes.
And Catherine, let's talk about veterans and homelessness. What's working and how can it be expanded?
So before I dive into that, I just want to let you and your audience know that Tennessee has actually decreased veteran homelessness by almost 25% between 2023 and 2024, and that is phenomenal. I think it's rare to see that level of progress on a percentage basis, and so I do think that there are probably things that the rest of the country can learn from you all. When you think big picture and you're zooming out to the nation, right, what we're really looking at is a long-term, sustained, bipartisan effort focused in on ending veteran homelessness. And that manifests itself in a couple of different ways in communities across the country. And the first is that the really successful communities focus in on reorienting their response to homelessness so that they're really focused in on housing placements at the end of any intervention or housing as the intervention and services and supports that allow people to really thrive as they're placed in housing. I think the second thing that we see is that the sustained federal attention has allowed for some really great local level focus and innovation and partnership and collaboration that happens in a very different way and is often not organic or intuitive, right? And so that level of attention has really allowed communities to hone in on what we're doing and what works. And I think the third thing, quite frankly, is the resourcing of our programs, right? I think over the last decade and even a little bit before that, we've seen some really unprecedented investments in programs for VA and HUD and the Department of Labor too, to a lesser degree, that focus in on how we support veterans as they move on from homelessness. And, you know, all of that trickles down into communities across the country. And so it's really critical that we sustain that, right? And we think about how we can replicate that for non-veterans.
And criminalizing the homeless, what do you say about this and why you feel it's the wrong approach?
Look, we know that it can be really frustrating for people in communities to see encampments and to see tents in their parks and on their streets. And I can assure you that it is even more frustrating for the people who are living in those tents because they can't access the housing and services that they need and that they want. Criminalizing, which means fining, ticketing, or arresting people just because they don't have a place to go at night, a place to rest their head, doesn't work. We know that it doesn't work. It actually makes the situation harder for people who are subjected to those policies because often they end up with a criminal record. It's harder to get a job. It's harder to get a lease. And we know that this approach really just hides homelessness and pushes it into other neighborhoods. It doesn't actually solve homelessness for anybody.
What can we do to advocate for those who are unhoused in our community?
So I think there are three things you can do. The first is to partner with local organizations that are doing the work, whether that's by volunteering, donating, spreading the good word. I think the second thing that you can do is to make sure that your local and state level elected officials know that you are absolutely concerned about the number of people who are still unsheltered and homeless in your community, and that you want real solutions like housing and services and supports. And I think the third thing that you can do is to really get engaged in what's happening at the national level, and you can do that in two ways. The first is by visiting endhomelessness.org to learn more from Anne and her team about what's working in the bigger picture. The second is to visit nchv.org to learn more from my team about what we're doing for veterans.
Okay, great. Ladies, thank you so much. You're watching.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.